Hello, family. Welcome to Your Work Aunty podcast. My name is Kalaida Marie Holmes. I am your host and Your Work Aunty. Today, we have a really great episode and a really great guest, Mr. Brian Wilson. We're going to talk to you about a very hot topic I think a lot of us are struggling with, or at least want solutions to, which is maintaining healthy adult relationships, mostly where it's focusing on friendships. And another episode, we'll talk about romantic relationships. So we really want to talk about platonic friendships. However, keep in mind that many of the things we'll talk about today are totally applicable to your romantic relationships, and you should consider those as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Brian to introduce yourself to the family.
Yes, hello. Well, so happy to be here on the Work Aunty podcast. That is a legendary name, by the way. But yeah, Brian Wilson. Let's see, I describe myself as a creator, facilitator. By day, I work in, IT space doing project management, change management. But at a personal standpoint, I love all things music production, photography, videography. And life has been really great to me. And any opportunity I can to, share my perspective and lessons learned, I'm very happy to do so.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And I reached out to Brian, like we'll be talking to you all later about finding friends or making connections. We just connected via LinkedIn. And so It's like, put yourself out there. If you have a topic you want to talk about, you want to make a connection, just put yourself out there. But we'll talk more about making friends later, and we're going to get into some questions. Now, one of the things I like to do before we get started is to set a baseline for everybody about what we're talking about, because I don't want you to say, well, friendships to me, no, Kalaida said. So that's what we're talking about, is that we all have interactions daily. So there's several kinds of people in your life. There's groups, there's acquaintances, there's romantic partnerships. And so when I say acquaintance, I don't mean a friend. I mean someone you literally say hi to. You may know their first name. They may come and go. If you're doing a little more than that, they're probably a friend, may not be a close friend, but we're still talking about a friend. And that's someone you like to be with. You enjoy talking with this person, doing things together, sharing secrets or past history, whatever that is. And then you have your close friendships, of course, like I said, and close romantic partnerships, which are not the topic today, but you're very close. It's basically when two people care about and love each other so much, you like to spend time together, and just really support each other in your career. So that's what we're talking about. But I also want to make a statement. Not every friendship is a close friendship or a romantic partnership. So don't expect the same, and I'm sure we'll get into this level of friendship from all of your friends, because it's not what it is. And also, you'll be setting yourself up, honestly, for a lot of confusion and heartbreak if you want all of your friends, all of your acquaintances to basically operate in the world of close friendship. So anything to add on those definitions before we dive in?
Yeah, no, that's so good, right? And I know we'll talk we'll dive into that more. And that some people might take that statement and add a negative, connotation to it, but I don't think it's good or bad. I just think it is what it is in terms of where both parties are at in their lives. And then also, if you get too stuck on the categorization of that friendship, you may actually miss what that relationship is supposed to do for both of you, in terms of, being open to receiving however much or however little, so yeah, you're spot on with that. And I agree.
Cool. Thank you. Yes. And I love to get it straight. But if you don't agree, you always have the comment section to sound off.
Flood them comments. Uh-oh.
Yes. Put it in the comments. So first question for you, Brian, how do you describe a healthy friendship?
Yeah. Wow. So, a couple, I guess, verbs, adjectives. Mm-hmm. Respect is definitely one of them. And, when I say respect, it is, especially as, adults, older folks, however you want to call it, just understanding that, everyone has, their own responsibilities and duties and things of that nature. So just being respectful of time and boundaries, not taking things personal in terms of, hey, we haven't done this, that, and the third, or you've been hanging out with these other groups of individuals or whatever it is. I think just, just understanding, Just understanding the relationship, understanding, where everyone is from from a mental standpoint. Um, I think the other one is transparency, and this will ebb and flow, based on that quote unquote categorization of friendships that we alluded to earlier, right? So, the transparency will probably run, much deeper. I have friends like, great, great best friends that I've known for 23 years, since I was, 15, and I'm 38 now. And so you can imagine how much life happens during those age periods, that you might share together. Versus maybe you have, great coworkers. I have coworkers that, I've known for, 10 years, some for 2 years. And so there's certainly, different levels of transparency and discussions that happen with that. But overall, it's still respectful. And that person is also engaged and interested in you as a person. It's not a one-sided sort of relationship, and you can pick up on those things organically as well too.
Yeah.
And then I think lastly is just intentionality with your friendship. Romantic relationships, once again, not part of this discussion, but platonic relationships also take work and massaging. To whatever degree, if that you want to maintain that bond with someone.
No, I think those are all great points. I agree. And sometimes I say no, and I'm like, yes, I don't know. It's right. Um, so yeah,
I've done that before. Like no, 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 no. You're right.
right, I'm one of those people. It's like, yes, you're right. So I agree with all the things you said. I think definitely like, having intentionality, but also like a friendship where you're able to be your authentic self. If you're in
Yes.
a
Yes.
friendship, in our relationship, and the person is always like making you feel like yourself isn't good enough or the right fit, that's not a friend, and it may be that you can maintain some other kind of relationship, but make sure you're in a space where you feel safe to be you, and don't feel like you're judged. And also, I think when you truly feel loved and cared for, I think I make sure I say I love you to my close friends,
Oh
non-romantic, all
yeah.
the time, because I think it's important to, one, put love into the life of others, but I also want to feel loved and cared for, like they truly care about me, that I'm safe with them, and that they wouldn't do anything to hurt me. And so I think those are always hallmarkers of, a good friendship. And you actually highlighted something that I didn't even think about for this episode, but I think it's the idea that you can't have work friends. I see so many social media posts that's like, I just go to work to do my job and go
Oh
home.
yeah.
I don't have friends at work. And I'm thinking, you're
Like
there so
it's a badge of
long.
honor.
Yeah, exactly. You're there more than you're with anybody, like more than we're with our families, if you have kids, or whoever, even your other friends. So it's like, why not, find or try at least to see if there's anybody within those environments that you can build a relationship with. And I have some really great friends, like you said, that I met at work, in all age groups, older, younger, like different backgrounds, and getting to learn about their cultures, meet their families. So I always encourage people to like really like not take work as just work, because you're there too long to not try to make friends at work. It just seems like not a good.
Yeah, that's so good because you know, the old adage of work versus personal, and work doesn't matter as much as personal life, and okay, yeah, for the most part, I understand where people are coming from when they make those remarks, but let's be honest, right? Like a lot of like you just pointed out, the majority of our time is spent work, whether it's virtual, interacting with our coworkers, or on site or in person. And so the more that we acknowledge that, like work is very much part of our lives, then we allow an opportunity to have those other sorts of relationships that can certainly enhance our lives, right? And you mentioned it as well. Like I have, I have very close work friends. I have work friends that are acquaintances, and then I have, yeah, close friends and acquaintances that range the gauntlet of, how many years I've known them, to the point when actually this past this holiday, this past Thanksgiving, I had, a close work friend and his family come over to our house, right? And this is a bond that we've had for like 10 plus years. So Yeah, I agree. The you know the idea that I'm going to keep work separate from personal, that's just not how our society is set up, and you're actually missing out on some of those benefits to your life.
Yeah. And I think some people are afraid of, getting burned or
Yeah,
sharing something and having it come back to bite you.
yeah,
And I think, like, use your discretion and also like don't overshare. I always tell people when you first meet the work friends, only share things you're comfortable hearing again. And then as you get to know that person and maybe you start spending time outside of work, you can decide like what level of friendship will this be. One of my best friends, Cardell. I think most people, if they know me, they know him because we met at work. And it was very much
yeah.
like a, hey, immediately clicked from a work perspective, but then started doing stuff outside of work that we enjoyed. And I left that organization maybe 14 years ago now. Life goes too fast, but we
Wow.
still keep in contact and we do things together. When he gets opportunities, he clues me in. I also tell him about things. It's a very supportive relationship that has lasted. And if I was one of those people, I would have missed out on like a really good friend who I've been able to travel with. I travel for every birthday. And so he's been on several of those birthday trips over the past 10 plus years. So,
And this goes with work and personal. So this is like the beauty of friendships. When you start forming those bonds, they then start introducing you to a network of individuals that you may have not met on your own, right? So
mhm.
like I'll go all the way back to high school. So I was born and raised in New Jersey, and then for a short period of time, about 3 to 4 years, we moved to Virginia, Northern Virginia, because my dad had got he got like a promotion in his job. So my freshman year of high school was in New Jersey, and then we're told that we're moving to Virginia. So you already know how that is, like in terms of like, wait a
Right.
minute, I just started high school and like what? That's crazy. So that
Yes.
so that took some that took some getting used to. But one of my closest friends to this day, Anthony, you know, we were in the same classes together in high school, and like that first like couple of months, he started introducing me to a group of individuals that he had known since his like elementary school days, and then I started becoming like super super close with them, and 23 years later, like we are all like very like we've folks have gotten married, folks have had kids, we've done guy trips, we tell each other we love you, you know we're also there for like the hardships of life, right? And this is where friendship is important, right? Because there has been deaths of immediate family members within various friend circles. And I'll even go to my college buddies, Rutgers University. So I've known them for 20 plus years. You know, we lived in the same dorm room, like in the same room, in the same suite for 3 of those 4 years. So what happened was we saw each other on campus, we liked each other, and like, okay, bet we're gonna make sure that we are in the same dorm for the next 3 years. Um, but we had and his name is Duval D for short, rest in peace. He passed away, very unfortunately, in 2021. And this is a guy. This is man, one of my great friends. We were doing music production together, just doing all types of stuff. Growing up together and whatnot. And so, his passing was really important for my college roommates who, for us to like lean on one another, show up for his family and things of that nature. So, yeah, friendships, because you can't go through life alone, right? And
And
there's conversations that you need to have with people that you don't necessarily want to have all the time with your parents, siblings, and romantic partners. So
right.
who else is left, right? It's those platonic relationships.
Yeah. And people, yeah, like you said, it's so important to have them. Sorry for the loss of your friend. I know that
Yeah,
it's like,
appreciate that.
I think people don't realize that when you lose friendships, it's like losing any other loved one. However you lose
Absolutely.
them, if they leave this earth or you just end up separating, the grief is real.
Yes,
So I'm sure you carry him with you and with you every
absolutely.
day. So yeah, I think people definitely, the part you said about connecting you with other people, it made me think of my friend Kenyatta. who deserves a lot of shout outs because I met Kenyatta through another work friend. Her name was Erica, and Erica was like, "Hey, meet Kenyatta," and it was
Yep.
very random. And we ended up being very, very close. Like we did trips together. She went on my last birthday trip. We still keep in contact when we all have things going on. And she was also one of the people. Like if I record an episode and I'm
Yeah.
not confident about it, I'm like, "Can you listen to this for me and let
Yeah.
me know what you think?" And so we've just managed to maintain this very great friendship. But again, like you said, if I was like, "Ugh, I don't do work friends," I would have never met her. I would have never, gotten to know Erica, who I met in grad school. So I think people just open yourself up, use your discretion. Don't immediately go straight in telling them
Right.
your whole life story and everything that happened, but pay attention to it. And sometimes you don't get the result you want. Like there are
Yeah.
friendships that go bad, whether it's work or not, but that doesn't mean you should decide that none of them are worth it, because you never know.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I've been in situations where either I'm at like a networking function or work or or even just out with friends and they might have another group of friends there like and we're all kind of this common area. Yeah, you just start having discussions with everyone, filling each other out. Just see where commonalities are at, and sometimes that's it. Like sometimes the length of that interaction is that one night, and
Right.
that's it. You know what I mean? And but part of why it hasn't been an issue for me or triggering for me is one, I definitely would say quality over quantity, right? So like I've got a very core base of personal friends, very close friends that I met through work, and when I go out and I interact with people, I don't think I have at the forefront of my mind that I need to make a friend, right? I'm not sure, and if any listeners have that at the top of mind, I challenge you to relieve some of that pressure. I mean, I just and I'm sure Kalada, you can think back to your experience, but I think back to like my close friends now and even acquaintances. I don't know. I've just really feel like I've met them organically. Like, of course, maintaining the friendship and the relationship, takes effort and it takes intentionality. But when I think back to where I was at, like location and timing wise, I feel like the universe worked that out, right? Like that wasn't something that I was like, okay, I'm gonna go here at this time in this location, and I'm gonna make it a point to meet, three individuals, and like it doesn't happen that way. Like one of my, super close friends now that lives overseas, Dana. He's one of the six group of guys from Rutgers University that I've known and loved for 20 years. Him and I, this is like the first week of school, and we're walking to a baseball game. It's like kind of like something they have for like the freshmen, the incoming. And he said I had like a stern look on my face, maybe because I was like I was new to campus, and I was trying to make sure people didn't mess with me. So he was like he's like, yo, what's up, man? And he's like, and he said my response was, oh, who, me? With a smile on my face. And he was taken back. He's like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Right.
He wasn't expecting that, right? Because I had like a certain look about my face, and then when I responded, he's like, "Oh, you a smiling dude."
Right.
But
Yes.
but that's something where I couldn't have planned that interaction. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think a lot of the friendships and relationships, I think they happen that way. I think you've got to let it be organic. Put yourself out there. Put yourself in positions for those things to be able to occur. But yeah, just take some pressure off yourself. If you're one thinking of, hey, I want to expand my circle, I want to meet new people. Yeah, that's great, but keep an open mind and yeah.
Yeah, definitely keep an open mind. And I think something you said is so powerful because so many of us don't speak to people because we're afraid of rejection or that person has
Yes.
this mean face and they don't look like
Yeah.
they don't want to be bothered. Some people's thinking faces just look very they're
Yes.
not interested. They may be thinking about something else. And so just say hi. If they don't say hi back, I promise you, you won't die. It's honestly, it has nothing to do with you. It's usually like that person, like if they don't want to talk that day or they're going through something, I think we take it so personal, like, oh, they didn't
Yeah.
say hi back. sometimes if you're really zoned, you don't even hear the person saying hi. You could
Yes.
be completely gone. But I had a good friend. He moved to Nigeria and we sort of lost
Oh
contact.
wow.
But
Yeah.
I remember when I met him at the gym because we saw him walking around the cafeteria at our job, and he was like this really big 6'5" dude
Oh
with like
yeah.
an friend. And where we worked, like you stood out because it wasn't really a lot of us. And I was like, "Who is this?"
Wasn't a
So
lot
I
of 6'5" Nigerians, huh?
no, and not at all. So I see him at the gym. So I walk over and he looks, like you said, very stoic,
Yeah.
very much like I shouldn't go say hi. And I go and I'm like, hi, immediately, full teeth,
Yeah.
like smiling, everything. And we just had this great conversation. I'm like, hey, I saw you in the cafeteria at work. Do you work there? And then he started talking to me. I have a lot of Nigerian friends. So then I started asking him, like, oh, are you Igbo? Are you this? And then
Yeah.
that's like, oh, you're in there.
You're
And I
really
was like, oh,
Nigerian.
exactly. I was like, I can make stew. So, we ended up being really good friends just because I wasn't afraid. I was like, I want to say hi. I don't know where he is. Who's this
Yeah.
guy in the cafeteria? But I like just like don't think too hard about it. Like, and like you said, just go out and have fun. People will say hi. If you're introverted, some extrovert will adopt you. Like if you're present, they're going to come over, they're going to say hi. And if you really just don't like big social settings,
Yeah.
craft a setting that you're okay with. Like
Yeah.
go to gaming nights or silent parties or whatever it is that works for you. But yeah, like let's not think too much about it. I think we think a lot about it. And DC is a very also like Detroit was outward appearance. So you're like, how do I look and all that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Go where you can find your people. Like, don't, if you're going someplace where you don't feel comfortable, then don't go. Go
Yeah.
somewhere else. There's a lot of places to go in DC, a lot of things to do in any city. So I know listeners are everywhere, but just go out, go do something, go to Comic Con, go to the
Yeah.
theater, go to whatever. I've met so many random people. Sometimes we exchange numbers in the bathroom at the Kennedy Center, whatever. Hey,
Yeah.
I like your shoes. Oh, yeah, girl, I got them from here.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's very simple if we don't overcomplicate it. Like, just say hi. It's real simple. And don't be weird, though. If the person's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
smiling,
Yeah. Don't be weird. Don't stare. You
exactly.
know.
Don't stare. I will say, sometimes when I see somebody that's really attractive, man or woman, I will kind of keep looking because I'm like, wow, that's a really. And so
Touche.
that's what I'm
Touche.
like,
Touche.
asking. I was like, it's weird. And I have a really good friend, and if she hears this story, she's probably gonna laugh. The first time I met her, she was staring at me, but I don't know why. And so then I was like really concerned. I was like, why is this girl staring at me? And she's like really pretty. So I was like, what is happening? Like, is this some sort of like mean girl thing? Like, I didn't even know her at all, but she just kept looking at me. But when we went to the bathroom on break, she came up to me and was like, oh, I appreciated some things you had to say. So she was like more or less looking at me from a like trying to understand or like hearing me, but I
Yeah.
was like automatically in my head. And we're such good friends. But had
That's
I like
funny.
listened to my first mind, like she's staring at me, how dare she? I would have missed out on like an awesome friendship. So, and Karika, if
Oh,
you're listening, hello. It was
there is so much good stuff that you mentioned there. So the first one that I want to chime in on is so my wife Alexis. So start off as a platonic relationship, but you mentioned something that talks a little bit about vibes, right? So there's this story that I love this story, right? Because it gives me a big head. But so at Rutgers University, so it was my group of roommates. She was a couple years behind me, but she had a group of friends, that would kind of hang out with some of my friends, just platonically and hanging out, chilling out around campus. And I didn't know this, until a little bit later on in the relationship. So I was walking through the campus center, I think with a couple of my guys, and she was sitting there with a couple of her girlfriends, and she mentioned to one of her girlfriends like, "Hey, it's something about him. Like I don't know what it is." And from her standpoint, it wasn't even just like strictly like a physical attraction. And I think my wife is like good with vibes and spirits. So from her standpoint, seeing me across the way, it was something she mentioned, right? And that was like a year or two before we even like went down the whole romantic relationship path. But I bring that up, right? Because when we're out in public, I've been approached by like random, so I think I tend to smile a lot. Um, self-admittedly, I think I'm really good with speaking in public, speaking with, strangers. And so, I've been out where, people just, seem to be drawn. They want to have conversations. And yeah, I think that's dope. I think that's really good for anyone that's, out there that, thinks they want to build more friendships or, build and make more connections. Yeah, just be aware of kind of the vibe that you might be giving off. And I think that vibe actually starts with your mindset. Like, believe it or not, it's kind of amazing how consciously or subconsciously our thoughts can actually position and posture ourselves from a physical standpoint to where, how receiving and what sort of energy are we giving off when we're in, a group or, a crowd of people or just out and about. So that's something to, be aware of too.
Yeah. I think that's good. Yeah, definitely your vibes and your energy. And also on the counter, if
Yeah.
you feel somebody is not like you, so I have a pretty good sense of discernment, as we say in the
Yes.
South,
Just that's
but I
discernment
will
is good.
challenge
That's the
myself
word for
sometimes.
today.
It is, yes. And I had a friend joke. He's like, I have to like use the dictionary when I listen to your podcast. But so here's another word. Look it up. And I would always, but someone made me feel bad about it once, and I like internalized it. They're like, you can't just snap judge someone and
Mm.
decide. And so I would meet people and immediately get like not a good vibe. I was like, this is not
Yes.
really with me, and I would force it. Like I would go, I'd still be
Yes.
friends with them. I'd still go hang with them, and every single time whatever energy I was feeling or getting in that first interaction usually showed up in the friendship. And then I ended up feeling uncomfortable or like something was wrong with me when really I should have listened to my first vibe. It doesn't mean I needed to like treat them badly or cut them
Yeah.
off, but allowing them into my personal life and space, yeah, I should have trusted my gut. So if you are getting bad juju
Yeah.
off a person, trust yourself. Like sometimes your body knows, your spirit knows, and you can kind of, maybe stick your toe in a little bit to see how it's feeling, but don't jump all in because you need to trust yourself. Like sometimes, like when you get goosebumps or the hair
Yeah.
stands up on your arms or you just don't feel good in somebody's presence, your body knows. Like move on.
Yeah. Wow. I'm so glad you said that. Right. And I think that's like an important discussion to have here. Because so far we've been talking about like the positive, the friendships, and like, the good things to look out for. But you hit the nail on the head. You're also going to have interactions and engagements with people where, like you said, you either something is off, you don't feel comfortable, you feel like you have to hide a little bit about yourself, and let that be what it is. Like you said, don't force it. You don't have to treat them necessarily bad. Maybe you place that individual in the acquaintance realm, and you talk about the weather and sports with them, and not anything
Right.
else. You know what I'm
Like,
saying? But yeah, I've definitely been in situations where like you'll meet someone, like you're at like a gathering that has like common friends and whatnot, and the conversation is just kind of not what you expect, or it is what it is, and you just leave it at that. But we should also normalize that, and that's also okay, right? Because then on the flip, so think about it. Think about if we actually hit it off with every person that we met. I
right,
mean, we're gonna have 5,000 friends. Like, I don't know about
right.
you, I'm not trying to maintain 5,000 relationships. So like,
I'm
yeah,
not
so like that,
no.
like that's
Yeah,
just not gonna happen. You know what I mean?
exactly.
And look, that person also. So I think highly. I think I'm a good person. I think I got good features about me. I know for sure. On the flip side, I've interacted with people and they're just like, oh yeah, he's just not my cup of tea. And I think we also
Right.
gotta be honest with that too, right? So yeah,
Yeah, and be okay with, like you said, be okay with not being people's cup of tea. Like I've had people tell me that, like, yeah, this person just isn't like you, and I'm like, well,
yeah,
I
look,
mean,
look,
too bad for them. They're missing
right,
out on a whole bunch of awesome. But I mean, I'm not. I don't. I'm not going to change myself for that person to like me. I mean, good for them that they are not forcing themselves to be around somebody that
yeah.
they don't vibe with. So I think that definitely makes sense. Um,
People
so I
make those
think
comments as if sometimes people make those comments as if you should feel some kind of way, or like the world is ending. Like, oh yeah, I don't think this person likes you. Like, to your point, it's like I don't know how to respond to that. Like, thanks for letting me know. Like,
like like thank you, yes, yes, unless they're like actually plotting my demise or
right,
trying to harm me, thank you for this other piece of information
right,
that I probably need. But yeah, people do like to tell you, um and also in that same thing, if someone likes to tell you about people who don't like you, and they
a
also seem to
lot.
have a lot and they also want to tell you what the person said about you, this is known to be true. The conversation cannot be one-sided. It takes two people to
Yes.
have a conversation. So
Yes.
also watch out for that. There are some people that like to live in messiness.
Yeah.
And if that's not something you like, I would encourage you, if you do like messy, that there that you should
There's a place for
reconsider
Messi.
that. Exactly. But if you don't like messy, pay attention to friends that are bringing that to you, and let them know, like, hey, that's cool. You and that person are friends. I don't need to know about them. You guys
Yeah,
shouldn't be talking about me. Like, and we'll all be good.
exactly.
Definitely speak to that, but be mindful, because there are people who love to say, so and so doesn't like you, and then they said this and they said that. Where were you when they said this and
Why were
that?
they?
Like,
Yeah, why were they comfortable to be able to share that with you? Ooh, yeah,
exactly. Did you not advocate for me? And I think this goes into like creating healthy friendships. Some of it
yeah,
starts with like supporting your friends, but what are some other ways you really support your friends to your friendships to make sure they're healthy?
yeah. So just check-ins, being there for major, minor life events. So right now, like I'm thinking back to like my pockets of friends and kind of like what I've done over the years for it to be healthy. I think it's just showing up, right? Like for example, I have a friend who lost both of their parents within like a year and a half of each other, right? And it's checking in. It is showing up in person when you can, for whatever those arrangements might look like. It's a lot of it's not rocket science, right? Like some of it's just basic.
It's really not. Yeah.
It is so remembering birthdays, remembering family members' birthdays. It's like the holiday type stuff. It's hanging out in person. It's footing the bill every once in a while, so it's not lopsided in terms of like, okay, you're always buying food, you're always buying drinks, whatever it is, right? Showing that you're vested. And then I think a part of that is what once again, those relationships will vary, but with me having friendships that are 23, 20, 15 years, life provides you opportunities for you to see where each other falls in the realm of priorities in each other's lives, and how you
Right.
react to certain situations, right? I think a lot of that is so if I counter that with let's say you have a friendship that's a year old, and that's great, right? That 1 year friendship could manifest to 5 years, it could manifest to 20, or it could manifest to just 2 years, and seasons change, and that is what it is. But I also think there's goodness in time frame, because once again, like I said, life provides you those opportunities to really see where everyone's at in that relationship.
Yeah. No, I agree definitely with life providing opportunities, and also one of the things I was thinking earlier is like life be lifing, right? And
Life,
so
life.
giving your friends, right, giving your friends grace when they can't make it hang out with you sometimes. Like,
Yes,
my friends are
yes.
married. I'm the chronically single friend of the
Okay,
group.
okay, okay.
When they all went started getting married, it was like an adjustment because they weren't as available, especially when
Yeah,
they started having kids. And it wasn't like, hey girls, let's just get together and go travel on a weekend. They had to consider
yeah,
finances and planning with their spouse. And so, but I had to realize it wasn't about me. And that was okay,
yeah,
because sometimes their priorities didn't include me. And sometimes their best day or their best didn't include me. And so I had
yeah.
to let them be able to do what they need to do. Now, if it becomes a situation where I feel like, okay, you're just clearly avoiding me,
Right,
then we
right.
need to have a conversation. But I think when my best friend, when she got married, and I even joked about it when I gave my toast at her wedding, I was like, we used to talk every day until she met you, sir.
Yeah,
And now you're taking up my phone time. But, life changes, and giving your
yeah.
friends grace to recognize that you now have to fit in differently. But also me remembering that even if my life does change, that I still value this friendship enough to make it a priority from time
Yes.
to time. So I think it's also having that balance. And the other thing for me is like listening. I feel like we don't listen enough
Hmm.
sometimes. Like, we really want to relate so quickly or find a solution, or we're busy. Like, we love taking calls when we're doing 5,000 other things.
Yeah,
And so it's like really listening to hear what my friends need from me, and what's important to them. Like, my best friend, her birthday's on Thanksgiving, or around it. She
yeah.
never actually tells you the exact day because she doesn't care. She just wants a happy birthday. And her big thing is she doesn't really want gifts, she wants cards.
Oh
And so I try
wow. Okay.
to remember that that's what she really wants. She wants the card. She wants something said to her in writing and it's nice. And that's like $5. And it's not a huge investment for me to
Yeah.
remember, send her a card. Or some years I forgot and I had Hallmark send her a card. But it's like
You were
finding
thinking
out what
about
you
her. You were thinking about her though.
exactly. Like show them you're thinking. And some years I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot up until the day I didn't send you anything. But it's like being okay with that. And then also, like you said, if you don't have the money, because some of our friends, we're not in the same financial
Yes.
places. And so
Yes.
like listening to that and being able to support them or offering sometimes the, like you said, like, I got it, girl. Oh,
Yes.
come on with me. Like, I don't want you to be left out. But also if you're in that situation where you and your friends are very different, because if you struggle helping them, then you don't have it.
Yes.
So also
Yes.
be real with yourself
Yes.
about what you can afford to do.
Yeah.
And then like we tell dudes about dates, go to the park. It's free. If you're in DC, go to a free museum. Like do something. Sit on the couch together. Like
Yeah.
my best friend and I are at the stage where we don't really go out when we hang together. We literally are like, hey, let's put on a movie. Let's just sit on the couch and chat. So us hanging out is mostly free. But if you want to get out, like just find ways to still be with that person and not
Yeah.
let money or distance or time really get in the way. And most of my friends also live out of state.
Yeah.
So we do a lot more texting and calling than seeing each other in person. But like you said, the major milestones, if I can, I do my best to make it there, for the christenings and baptisms and weddings and anniversaries
Yeah.
and parties, especially for my Chicago friends. No shade to anybody else, but they throw the best parties. So my Chicago friends are having a party, I will get on a flight, I will go for a hot weekend to go party in Chicago with my friends because they know how to have a good time. But yeah, just be there for them.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, man! You've said so many good things that I want to talk about. One of them is so I've got going back to some of my roommates from Rutgers. They're all in New Jersey. So one of them is in Germany, who and I feel bad because I have not visited him in Germany, and that's like a whole discussion that he gets on me about it. We love each other. He gets on me about it, and actually. And I'll kind of start with this topic a little bit about like the money and
Mm-hmm.
like finances and being able to do things. One of my I encourage listeners out there, especially if you don't have like a family, spouse or kids as of yet. If you have friends that are live in other locations, or they want to do trips, highly encourage you to do those. Find a way to pull money and resources together, because experiences, man, we're all getting older, and there's certain experiences that you really want to take advantage of. And I've told my I've come up with excuses in my head on why I can't do certain things, et cetera, et cetera. But it really was it really did mean much. It was just excuses I came up with. So highly encourage folks to you all to do things with your friends, travel with your friends, go to good restaurants, do great experiences, do great things. Like that's something that I'm certainly catching up on now. Just did like a guy's trip a couple months ago, which was awesome. Like I don't know how much I spent. I didn't care what I didn't care what I spent, because this was probably like we do like a big trip maybe once or twice a year. And so like when we're 78, when you're 70 years old, you're not going to be thinking about that $300 dinner. I promise you. You're not going to be thinking about it. You're going to be
You're not.
thinking about your friends. You're going to be thinking about, are all my friends still alive? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like that's what you think about. So, and that's something I
And
really
the
want to.
memories, the jokes you made,
Yes.
the
Yes.
the waiter. We went to New
Yes.
Orleans once for my birthday. We had the
Ooh,
worst
New Orleans
waiter
is
ever,
awesome. Oh no, really? I
but
did my bachelor
it was
party in
such
New
a funny
Orleans.
experience
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that my friends we were like he was really awful, but this is also really funny. So it's like you said, we don't, and I think it was expensive. It was like an Emerald Lagasse restaurant, so it wasn't
Yeah.
cheap.
Right.
But it was like we still had so much fun laughing about the situation later and in
Yes.
the cab ride. So it's like you said, it's all about the memories, and also like you don't have to travel tomorrow. So if that is the thing, like
Yes.
save up for it,
Right.
plan. Sometimes when I used to do group trips before COVID, I was a group trip planner.
Yeah.
I would tell people like 2 years out. I was like,
Oh,
hey,
that's so good.
in 2019, we're going to Morocco. And actually, all the people who went to Morocco, most of them knew in 2017, we're going to Morocco.
Wow.
And so they had 2 years to start saving up that money and to start, if they needed to get a passport, if they needed to get global entry, like whatever it is. And then also, I feel like everybody should know this, but if you don't know, use Google Flights.
Oh
They
yeah.
will literally set
Yeah.
alerts and tell you when the price drops. So when the price drops to go on your international trip, just go. I have a good friend that also lives in Europe, actually two. One of them I haven't visited in like 12 years or
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
The other I've never visited. And
Yeah.
actually, we were on the phone prior to me recording this today. And it's like, it's crazy because I don't think I've seen him in person in maybe 14, 16 years. It's been a long
Oh,
time.
wow.
Yeah. And so I was like, you know what? And then when I come, and I was like, I'm going to go to Europe, but I kind of forgot. But something recently made me remember. And it's like, we need to reconnect. And so, because we
Yes.
were very close, like to the point that he practically lived in my house.
Yeah.
For like,
Yeah.
because we were just like really close. And then,
And now you haven't
he
seen him in 14 years.
exactly. So it's like, reconnect. And I think that's the other thing. And we'll
Mm.
talk later about like what dignifies like a healthy, like how it's healthy, is the ability to like connect like nothing happened.
Ooh, let's talk.
Like you're
Let's
good
talk on
friends.
that.
There's no time that has passed. Like you pick up the phone and it's like, yo, we're good. What you up to? What's going on in your life? But if it's awkward, unpack that a little. Now,
Yeah.
and I don't say like not be reactive. Every phone call is not going to be the best phone call you've ever had
Sure.
with your friend.
Yeah.
But like, pay attention to the energy again. We're talking about vibes. If your friend feels like they don't want to be bothered with you, because some of us feel obligated to maintain contact with people we don't want to be in contact with.
Yeah.
And so if you feel like it's something's going to, just ask, because it could just be a bad day, or it could be a conversation that somebody hasn't had. So yeah, check that out too.
Oh, wow. So, first thing, the reconnection. That is good. I think that is the marker of, where you're at in your friendship. Um, so I've one of my roommates. So, all right. So, earlier on we talked about like the levels of friendship and,
Mm-hmm.
just like the categorization. He's a really good friend. Once again, known him for like 20 plus years. We've, been at each other's houses. We've done all types of stuff together. And, when him and I talk, we don't. Okay, so he's a talker on the phone, and I'm like, bruh, like you gotta like, yo, like you're not gonna do text. Like he does like one word text responses because he's like, I really don't do text. I'm like, yo, it's 2023. Like I'm trying to multitask like throughout the day, like to have a 1 hour conversation. It takes a lot. So this is kind of the story I tell myself, right? I talk a lot for work. I lead a lot of meetings. I lead a lot of working groups. And so, and I know that's about myself. I know for me, talking on the phone is actually draining because I do so much of it. Um,
Yes.
but my friend, he's a talker on the phone. Now, when we talk, it's great. Like I feel fulfilled. We have great discussions. But I feel bad because I feel like I need to connect with him way more,
Mm-hmm.
but that means I've got to talk on the phone all the time. And it's like I have to get my mind right because I know it's going to be a deep conversation. I know it's going to be a
Yeah.
worthwhile conversation, but I just may not be there like in that moment or in that particular season. I love him nonetheless, and I'm sure we're always going to be connected. But that's one of the relationships where it's like, okay, uh, I'm not. It doesn't. I'm not gonna say it takes effort, but because the conversations can be so real, it
Yeah.
actually takes energy to do that in a good way. But I don't want to do it
Yeah.
all the time.
Right. No, I completely get it. My best friend and I, generally a phone call is about an hour to 3 hours.
Yeah.
So
Imagine having a conversation with that person every day just to stay connected.
and that's what we used to do before she got married.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh,
I
so
want to be clear. We
now the
did it
husband
every
has to do that.
Yeah, so we would talk every day, but now when she calls, I listen, but I also am like, okay, I want to be present. So then I start doing tasks that I need to
Yeah.
do that don't require attention, like
Okay.
washing dishes
Yeah. Yeah.
or loading and unloading the dishwasher. So then I feel like I could still totally listen because
True.
instead of
True.
trying to watch TV or listen to music, but I get it. Like some days it's like, and sometimes we're both like, oh, wait, it's late because she lives in Texas,
Yeah.
the time zone. And I'm like, yeah, girl, it's 2 o'clock over here. And she's like, oh, it's 1 a.m. So, we're just talking and talking. And we're both the kind of people where our conversations, like,
Oh
we
yeah.
can start on Palestine and end up on like a Diddy and then end up back on like a Nelly song from like 2004. Like, it's all over the place. So it's a very like, I would think dynamic conversation, but like you
Yeah.
said, it could be very rich. We get into political topics. We talk about work. She talks about her kids. I talk about my dog,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
whatever. We just talk. But yeah, I get it. And so, and that's one of the things, and one of the programs I'm in now, and it's like being present for conversations.
Yeah.
And so I try to make sure, and if she does call, and I know I can't, like if I'm just like you said, like I
Yeah.
don't have the capacity to fully be there, I just don't take the call. Like I text back, and I used to
Yeah.
feel really bad about it.
Yes.
Like hey, I'll call you back later. Like I let it ring all the way through because don't dismiss my call, but
Yeah.
I let it ring all the way
Don't
through.
send a voicemail.
Exactly. And then I'll text and say, hey, I'm in the middle of something. Can I hit you back?
Yeah.
And if it's urgent, she'll say that, like, I
Right.
really need to talk to you now. But otherwise, it's like, oh, sure, I'll talk to you later. So I think it's also like that and being present because I do think sometimes it's frustrating when you are trying to have a deep and rich conversation with
Yeah.
someone who clearly
Yeah.
is not available for you. Like
Yeah.
they're out and about, they're talking to family members, disciplining their kids and other things. It's like, well, I want
Maybe
this
I should
time with.
call back, I guess.
Exactly. And they're like, no, it's good. Put that down. So I'm sorry.
What did you
It's
say again?
exactly. It's not good. I can call you back. It's okay. So I think just being there for them. And another thing related to like being there is we have this tendency, and I don't know if I can speak as a woman,
Yeah.
where if someone tells you a story,
Yeah.
as soon as they finish the story, you want to tell your story, your version of what happened, right?
Oh yeah.
And instead of like actually just being there with them in the moment, like, oh,
Yeah.
I heard what you said. I understand that you're frustrated, whatever else. What do you need from me? It's like, because that's how we show relatedness. Like, oh, I
Right.
also have experienced this thing.
Right.
And sometimes that could make people feel like you weren't listening. And
Right.
so
You were just
I
waiting
would
to
say like,
respond.
exactly. And a lot of us are waiting to respond every day with our friends when they're telling us like really real stuff. So it's
Yeah.
like, give them a chance to process and then find out what they need from you because they may need you to give them support. They may just be venting,
Yeah.
they whatever. But also on the other end, speak up for yourself. I have a good friend named Tequila. Yes, her
Yeah.
name is Tequila. My name is Kalaida. We got a lot
Woo!
of jokes.
Hold,
So
look, Reposado, Blanco, Añejo.
she's like, my mom just thought it was a pretty name. And so, her name's, so one of the things, sometimes I would be complaining about stuff and then she would start to give me advice and I would say, stop. I don't actually want your advice. I just want to
That's good
I just want to have a
awareness
conversation.
though.
Exactly. And she was also able to take it. She's like, okay, got it. And she would just
Oh
let me talk,
wow. That's really
And
good.
so, but some people get so offended. It's like, I don't always want advice. Sometimes I want to vent, but I also gave her she could also say, like, at the end of that vent, like, okay, you said all that.
Yeah, yeah.
Here's
Wow.
what you said, in that time. But, it's like also like set boundaries and then be like adults about it. Like, I just feel like people often think friendship means like, I never hold you accountable. I never tell
Mm.
you anything you
Yeah,
did wrong.
yeah.
I'm never honest with you. I don't tell you if something doesn't look good on you. And there's ways to do it. Like if you do it with love, people will receive it, but also not everybody knows it's with love. Like you bring
Yes.
your past and your triggers with you and you're like, well,
Yes.
my dad used to always tell me, well, I'm not your dad. And
Yeah.
I'm simply telling you something. But one of the things I love about my best friend is sometimes when I would buy clothes and she didn't like it, she would say, I've seen you in better. She's actually never told me I've looked bad. She's
Yeah.
always been like, I've seen you in better.
Yeah.
And so that's included me like, this isn't the
And
outfit for me, but it's said in a way where I know what she means, but my feelings also aren't hurt. Like
that,
she doesn't
I
go into
love that.
detail.
That's so
It doesn't
good.
fit well. And so I've always appreciated that from her. She's like, I've seen you in better. And I'm like, oh,
I'm gonna,
noted.
I'm, I'm gonna use that with one of my guy friends. One be like, hey, bro, yeah, I've seen you in better.
Yeah, like just like this isn't the one for you, and I want to
Yeah.
look at you and be like, "Oh, my friend is killing it." So, and I think just having those conversations because sometimes there was a thing going around. Instagram, it was a prank that a person played on their best friend, and she said, "Oh, I cheated on my husband."
Oh
And the
boy.
best friend goes, he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna tell your husband."
Oh
he was like,
boy.
he's
Yeah.
like, "You need to tell him yourself, or I'll
Yeah.
tell you." He was like, "Because your husband treats you well," and
Yeah.
he's like, he's going through all the good things. He's like, "And you're better than this." And there were so many people in the comments like, "That's an awful friend. That's a toxic friend." Now, I will say, whether or not I told the husband would also depend on my relationship with the husband.
Yeah,
Like if
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah, yeah. Look, that could go, that could also go both ways. I get the
it can
intention.
go
I
both
get the
ways.
intent behind that. I get the
Yeah.
intent, but yeah,
But I'm like, I would definitely, if any of my friends told me they cheated on their husbands, I would not be like, yeah, girl, tell me how it was. I would be like, so what's happening
like what's
here?
going,
Like,
like how you been feeling? What's going on? Do you need? Yeah,
yeah, like
there's
how do we get
obviously
to
something going on there. Yeah.
yeah. And I think everybody, you should want your friends to hold you accountable. They shouldn't
Yes.
judge
Yeah.
you or make you feel bad. But part of friendship is holding each other accountable. A lot of people are out here struggling today because you don't have anybody in your life holding you accountable and you're not holding yourself accountable. So, like, get a friend that's going to be like, hey, what,
Yeah.
what is this?
So I love the accountability discussion. I've had, a couple, friends holding me accountable very early on, when my wife and I first started dating and they were just seeing behaviors and stuff. I was like, because, people that love you, they want to see good things for you. Right.
Exactly.
And so, holding accountable in terms of like, hey, like, check yourself, you know, you, they want to see good things because when we're our best, we can also be best for all those other ancillary relationships, right?
Mhm.
Like life merges together. You can't compartmentalize life, the way we think we can. And then the other one, I'm a man of spirit, spiritual man of faith, especially for men, right? There's, you know, especially in the African American community for men, certain conversations may be, frowned upon, and so, I've actually gotten, and this is actually more so like my close work friends, like, work friends that I've known for several years now, having really good discussions with them about just, how we're doing mentally, spiritually, studying Bible verses and scriptures, sharing opportunities to join different men's groups. Like that's so much of the good stuff that you can get from friendships. And once again, this is stuff that was cultivated from people I met at work, right? So imagine, and not to say anything about like my other group of friends, but these particular individuals through work, this is kind of like the plane that they've been on lately. And so imagine if
Yeah.
I didn't allow myself to be a part of that, maybe that's conversations that I'm missing out of my life, right? And
Right.
so, but yeah, being held accountable, checking in, on
Mhm.
each other, because like I said, if we're not our best, it's hard for us to to be good in our relationships. And people that really love you and care about you, they want to see good things for you.
Yes.
And
They
that
do
that,
want to see
that
good things.
that's another
Yeah.
that's another gauge. Like, like, so, if you have like a friendship, and you're, either unsure about the friendship or the friendship is starting to change and shift, that's another good gauge in terms of, what do you think their intentions are? Just look out for those sorts of behaviors, little things. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, wanting the best for you, I think, is key. Once we had a friend, and he would always comment on me and my college friends,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Yeah, I just like the energy you guys have. Like, all of you are motivating each other. You're
Yeah.
not jealous or anything like that." And that's one of the things I thought about as I was thinking about this episode. I've known my best friend and almost all of my college friends the same amount of time, over 20 years,
Yeah.
which is
Wow.
crazy. But we when we first got out of college, we all started buying houses and going to grad school, and what we really did is we put each other on. Don't
Yeah.
take this kind of loan. The
Yes.
interest rates have dropped. Don't do this, don't do that. And even when it comes to work, like, we all have talked to each other to some extent about our journeys, like when we wanted to change career
Yeah.
fields, or I went through a period where I would sort of, every 2 years I was doing a different job or something. And so, like, having those conversations, and even like my friend Tiana's husband, it's funny because I remember I was complaining about work once, and he stopped and he was like, "I'm sorry, but is it you at this point?" And so it was
Look,
a,
okay.
it wasn't,
Look, we talk
but
about that. All right.
Exactly, but it was a real conversation, and I was glad, we had the friendship through Tiana that he was the person to ask the question because I had to think, is it me at this point? Like, what am I
Yeah,
doing
he was
that I'm
bold man
complaining?
for that statement. Obviously, you guys have a good relationship. You guys have a good
Yeah,
friendship. Yeah,
we do have a good relationship. So I was like, okay, let's have a conversation. I was like, well, here's why I know it's not me, or here's what I'm looking for. But yeah, you want people that like you can laugh with, you can cry
yes,
with,
yeah,
you could be vulnerable with, because that's the other thing that you really need in order to have a healthy friendship is you have to be vulnerable.
yeah,
If you're
yeah,
going into that friendship guarded and you
yeah,
don't trust and you don't share, you're never really going to get that. And if you're with someone where they've done things that made you feel that you can't be vulnerable with them or
yeah,
trust them or share, then that's not a friendship that you really need to keep trying to put a lot of emphasis on because it's not working for you. But definitely, like, I think that's the thing, because one of the things my therapist,
yeah.
she told me a couple months ago, she's like, I think you have a lot of shallow friendships.
Mm.
And but what I realized with my therapist is I only talked about the things in my life that weren't working. So I wasn't telling
Oh,
her
yeah,
about like
yeah,
the
yep,
things that were like going well and the friends I talked to and like the
yep,
advice they gave me. But I still listened to what she said because there were friendships that I had that were shouldn't be shallow. Like I was like they had titles and
yeah,
and I talked about them a lot. And I was like, and so maybe I should put more in that. And then there were others where I was just like, you know what? That's fine.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
this works for me. Like I don't feel like everybody needs to be like my absolute best friend that knows all of my secrets and could give like a great eulogy at my funeral.
yeah,
Only need one.
yeah,
So that's pretty much it. But I think like being vulnerable is hard, especially I think as a community we're so guarded.
yeah.
And especially like as Black women, sometimes like starting with our moms and grandmothers, like don't trust her and we're in
Oh,
competition
yeah,
and all this other stuff. It's like work on that. So if you are finding that you are not opening yourself up, then there's some other things to do. And your friends can't be your therapist. Like your
right.
friends are not there to coach you through trauma. And if your friend is a therapist, I promise you they want to be paid for that work. So go find somebody who can actually help you out and in these instances so that you can really share and have rich friendships, because I really feel like my friends who I could be the most transparent and honest with are like it's like a relief because like you said, you don't always want to talk to your family. You don't
Yeah,
always like I have two sisters. There are certain conversations that I don't always want to have with them, or
yep.
it may be something that they don't relate to. And so having those people that I can go to in addition to my family is always good. And like you said, the work friends, like I have so many, like you said, different levels like of work friends,
Yeah.
like work is hey on LinkedIn. And then there's like the ones where, like I said, we hang out, we talk, we go to each other's weddings, we plan trips. And as I'm starting to come outside more, since we really, I
Oh, you
guess, are
outside,
past
outside.
a little bit, a little bit. I was like, okay, I could plan stuff. I have some friends, people I could do things with. And so, and that's important because sometimes, I don't get lonely often, but every now and then I do want to go out, like
You want
out
to do
with people that
something?
I care
Yeah,
about and want to spend time with. And every time I go out, it can't be a trip out of the country. So I also have
yeah,
to respect my millennial finances a little bit better. Because you know how we millennials spend. We're like, oh, it can't go with us. But every now and then we need to
I'll make it back.
exactly. Like we'll be all right. So no, I think that's very good. I have a question. So we've talked about some good friendships and we've
Yeah,
talked about other things. Have you ever fallen out with a friend? And you could share as much or as little as you
yeah.
want. And then if so, how were you able to reconnect, or was it just like a wrap on that friendship? And what did you learn from that?
Oh, I'm thinking, right? So there's a couple people that I was like, super super tight with, where I think just, life and things got in the way to where we weren't able to like intentionally like form and maintain that friendship. And it wasn't from the standpoint of there was something bad that occurred, right? I just think we, we have a finite source of energy, right, for ourselves that we can only divvy out. And these could have been scenarios. These could have been scenarios where this was the universe in life just pruning, what was for a time that could potentially make way for either enhanced current relationships or new existing future relationship. So I actually I can't think of a friendship that ended because we fought, we squabbled, or like somebody said something disrespectful. I think the friendships that I have had before, you know, so I'm sure I could reconnect with them, right? In terms of like, hey, checking in, seeing how things are going. But I don't know. Maybe they just kind of they are where they are now. Maybe in like a temporary holding pattern, or maybe they'll never be what they were, at the onset. But it wasn't because anything bad occurred. So to speak.
Like there's no love loss. It's just it
Yeah,
is.
it's just
Yeah,
kind of is what it is. Yeah.
yeah. I've had a couple of situations where I've kind of fallen out, but it wasn't really like you said. It wasn't like a whole big fight. It was more or less me recognizing that this no longer served me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it wasn't like a selfish thing.
Yeah.
It was more of a I either feel used, uncomfortable, unsupported, or that the person actually didn't like me. So if
Oh,
you are a
okay.
woman listening and you do this thing, please like let's work on this.
Yeah.
We will literally fight for friendships where someone clearly does not like the other person and literally make you feel bad for not wanting to be around someone that doesn't actually like
Oh,
you.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's like it's so hard to have friendships and we need to stick together. But why though? There's like
Yeah.
millions of us in the world. And if I'm not your cup of tea, like we talked about earlier, let's just spare each other from hurting each other's feelings
Yes.
or being around each other if we don't want to be around. And so those are situations where I kind of just fell back and was like, yeah, let me let this just sort of die off. And because there was already, I think, some challenges, they didn't try hard to connect and neither did I. So
Yeah.
those just sort of naturally died off. One of the things I'm doing to be more intentional is when I start to feel uncomfortable or like something's off is like actually addressing it and being complete with it. So at least I know if it's over, it's good, we're good. Because sometimes when we stop talking to people, people immediately decide we're enemies, and
Right.
we're not enemies.
Right. Right.
We're just not that close anymore.
Right.
But I still wish you well. I still would say hi to you. If you had a birthday party with a whole bunch of guests, I'd still come probably.
Right.
But I'm not going on your trip with 6 people though. But,
That is
like
yeah. Wow. So yeah, actually last night. So this is a guy I used to work with for a few years, and then I left the agency. He also left the agency, so we weren't seeing each other every day. And it got to the point where maybe we'll text like 3 or 4 times out the year. And so when you had asked me about like friendships or relationships that like kind of died off, like this is one where for whatever reason we don't talk often, right? It kind of just is what it is. But we do hit each other up like every 3 or 4 months for whatever reason. Maybe something reminds us of something, or we've seen something, and we'll have like an extended text throughout the day, and then that might be it for another 3 months. And
yeah.
it's so so I think I still consider that person like a friend or like an
Mm-hmm.
acquaintance, right? Like you said, if they have a party or if they have like a gathering, like I'll certainly be there. um, but we're not in each other's day to day lives, and
Right.
it is what it is.
Yeah.
And I don't know why it evolved to that, but it's okay. Like I
Yeah.
actually think it's
It's okay.
fine.
Like you said, there's so many of us, all of us can't maintain
Yeah,
like hundreds of friendships to the
right,
same level. And I think people like be okay with that. Like if you and it's not because they don't like you, and they might not, but and
right,
and
right.
but figure that out. It's just because stuff just happens.
Yeah,
Like we just move on, and like you said, we reach out. I have some friends from college and high school where it's the same. Like we don't talk for a long time, and then every 3 6 months, a year
right.
later, we're like, hey, what's up? When I'm originally from South Carolina, so
Okay.
I was home for like 5 weeks, and my high school best friend, I happened to go work out at the gym, and there he is. And we like
Yeah.
hey, hug each other up, then get on the phone a few nights later, talk for several hours. I don't think I had spoken to him maybe for about 3 or 4 years
Yeah.
before I ran into him at the gym, but like it was like no time passed
Yeah.
because, like you said,
Yeah.
life is like I have nothing against him.
Yep.
We didn't have any beef. It was just life's just life in,
Life
and
is
we're all
life.
just out. Exactly. So I think people definitely like remember that because I think we all tend to like create stories like, oh, they're
Yes,
not talking to me because
absolutely.
of this. or they didn't invite me on this thing or that
Absolutely.
thing because they don't like me, it may not even be all that deep. Like,
Yeah.
and if you feel some kind of way, you should ask, you should bring it up.
Yeah.
Um, the last thing we talked about vulnerability a little bit earlier. Um, so I guess my question for you, and I'll define vulnerability because I do like to define things for the people. So healthy vulnerability, and the reason why I want to distinguish that is because you could be a little too vulnerable in a way that's putting your safety at risk. Like
Sure.
you're being vulnerable with people that don't deserve that kind of access to you.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
being open and honest with others about one's emotions, thoughts, and experiences while also setting safe boundaries. So that's the big part. So it's healthy. If you're just telling everybody everything,
Yeah.
then that's probably not safe for you either. But is that something you see for yourself in your relationships, in your friendships that you have?
Yeah, for sure. And so a little bit earlier, you brought up the example of, a friend tells you one thing, they tell you a story, and then, we tend to want to tell our story as well. I think in certain scenarios that's okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that
Yep.
that that could be. So let's say, you have a friend that's going through a particular experience, or they're dealing with something. You acknowledge that, and then you might also say, man, you know what, I actually went through the same thing, man. I had some of the same
Mm-hmm.
thoughts, I had some of the same experiences. That in itself can, grow the bond. And yeah, that creates that vulnerability because not most people, your true friends, don't want to see bad or unpleasant things happen to you.
Agreed.
When you share those experiences with those particular individuals that deserve it, that's what creates that vulnerability. It gives assurance that you too are human, that you too have dealt with this, and that, hey, maybe you're someone that I can actually lean on to deal with kind of whatever is going on, whether it's relationships, financial, family, health wise. Like when I think about like my close friendships now, you know, we've had discussions at all those levels, right? And I don't have those discussions with, acquaintances or people that just, there's no, we don't have that sort of relationship to do so, and that's okay, right? And I'm sure they feel the same thing about me. Like I'm sure people meet me and they don't want to have discussions with me, and they have it with other people. um but to your point, yeah, just being understanding of how much to share, to where you're not putting yourself in danger with, particular information, other friends, things of that nature. And once again, that's going back to discernment, the word of this podcast. That
Yeah.
discernment, you'll be able to pick up on that. Like, once again, thinking back to my friendships now, like there wasn't a moment in time where I was like, and now I can trust this person, right?
Right. It's like,
It's
yeah.
like, okay, we've been talking for 2 years. I can trust you now. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
happen that way.
Right. It wasn't a mile marker,
Right.
like an event.
Right.
Like we're having the I trust you day. Yeah. Yeah, definitely like having that sense of discernment. And if you, and some people, I honestly, I guess you just don't have that.
Yeah.
But I think, and I'm going to share some questions before we wrap up of
Yeah.
things to think about if you don't have a good sense of
Yeah.
discernment. But, like definitely trust yourself. And the other thing related to vulnerability is also consider who you're sharing with and where they are. Because if you
Ooh,
are
talk
talking
on
to a
it.
friend and they're going through it
Yes.
and you're adding your burden on top,
Yeah.
while I'm sure they love you very, very much,
Yeah.
ask and make sure they're in the space to receive whatever's going on. I remember I would say she's a friend. I would say now we're more like acquaintances.
Yeah.
And I just stopped talking to her. It was in it, and I felt bad about it. So later I did go back to her and kind of explain why.
Yeah.
But it was during COVID and I was having a hard time. Like it was so much going on. And she was also having a hard time, but a
Yeah.
harder time than I was.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
every day it was like dumping and there was some other new trauma, some other new event. And I just one day I gave her some advice and then she didn't like it and rejected it and was like, I don't need your advice or whatever. And I was like, you know what? This is too much. I
Yeah.
was like, I'm not in this space. I can't do it anymore. And I just stopped talking to her. Like, I mean, flat out, I didn't block her or anything, but I just stopped
Yeah.
responding. And it was just because I just mentally was like, I just can't do it anymore. And what I should have done is say, hey, I'm not in a place to receive all this. So let's connect in a few weeks. But it ended up being almost like a year or two
Yeah.
before I finally went back to her and said, hey, you know what? I'm really sorry. When you were coming to me, I just realized in that day, in that moment, that I just couldn't be there for you
Yes.
and all of the things you were going through.
Yes.
And then she actually said to me, you're not wrong. She's like, I was a mess. She's like, I had a lot going on. She's like, I'm sorry for dumping on you. And she's like, and so we're good. Like, so we still don't talk the way we did before, but
Sure.
I just was not in a space. And I think during COVID, a lot of people kind of had some friendships like that where I think people just couldn't receive what you were going through because we were all going through trauma at the same time. And it's
Yeah.
not that the person didn't care about you. We just, at some point, was like, I have to protect my own mental health. And so I think, remembering that, like, your friend may love you and care for you, but you also need to make sure that they're in the space to receive whatever you're going through. And that's also why, like, therapy and things, if you can afford it or get resources, are so important. So you could take your burden to someone who has the capacity to hear it and give you sound advice, because it's not always your friends.
Yeah. No, I love what you mentioned there, and so and even for myself, I have a challenge with you know being honest about what the barrier is. Like you said, like you went back to your friend and you're like, and you said, look, I can't listen to you right now, or in so many words. Whereas, what I might do more often than not is either not respond, or I'll pick up the phone and I'm doing other stuff, so I'm not listening anyway. Whereas I should have just said this is not a good time to talk. Like, yeah, just being, that's another level of transparency, right? Like, hey, man, I empathize with what you're going through. However, the sorts of support that you need right now, I unfortunately don't have the energy to do so. And there's been a church message recently that just wrapped up. It's like a 5-part series called Margin, creating margin in our lives. And the challenge is, our responsibilities outweigh our resources. And so if you have friends that are dumping on you constantly, yeah, you want to be a good friend, you want to show up for them, but then what is the collateral damage for your family, for your work, for your health? All for the purpose of ensuring that your friend has your ear. Because if you're not good, then you then need to find someone, so then who's going to pick you up when you're then now down? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the good thing about the chain impact is it's like we take the burden to someone else, and then you find yourself talking about the person or they're spreading
Yeah.
their business
Yep.
because you're like, it's so much. Like, I don't know, I need to unpack what I just heard.
Yes.
And I remember I got certified to teach relationship awareness, and one of the persons in the class was a therapist, and he was like, yeah, therapists really gotta, like, they need a therapist. He's like, because
Oh
they
my
gotta deal with this shit.
goodness.
That was his words, but it's like it's the same thing. Like, they're receiving so much from other people all the time. You need someplace to unpack that,
Yes.
and then also, like, reassess your life and not take on other people's problems, because we all, as people, we want to help people and we want to fix things, but everything is not for us to fix. So I think,
Yes.
knowing that, and being okay when a friend tells you that, like, and not thinking it's like they don't care about you or they don't love you,
Yeah.
but also being understanding, like, hey, like, everybody can't make you their priority.
Yeah.
And and I've seen people get very upset by that. Well, how dare they don't care about me. I
Yeah.
care about you, but I also care about myself.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
I can't be a martyr right now because I have other things to take care of in my life.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, there is a chain effect of, your work and your family and your, responsibilities, that if I don't take care of those things, then I can't be good for anybody. And I think you said that a lot
Yeah.
earlier about, being good for others as much, if you're good in one capacity. And I think that, like you said, one of the things I thought about when you said that earlier was, like, the reason why I think that example of the friend telling on the other friend for
Right.
cheating is, if you're dishonest in one part of your life, it's really hard for me to imagine that you're not dishonest in
Right.
others.
Right. That's true.
So
That's
then I
true.
start to, like think about, like, can I trust you? Because you made a vow to this person,
Yeah.
and so it's like, doing what's right for yourself, but also recognizing that you want friends that's going to want you to be your best self, and also challenging things like that.
Yes.
So, last question. We've talked about so much. This was such a great episode. Since we are in the season of thanks and love, Are there any of your friends you want to say thank you to or send love to in this episode?
Yeah, wow. I've got a laundry list. All right, so my high school buddies who I've known and loved for like 23 plus years: Anthony, Mike, Grant, Ian, Andy, um, my Rutgers University roommates who I've loved as well. Rest in peace to Duvall. Shout out to Dana, Dane, two Mikes, both Mikes, Justin. Man, those are my guys. We've done a lot over the last 20 years. And I have so much great, awesome close work friends, right? I got, two Brians, Mark, let's see, Jade, Norman, Lamont, Rob, Sean, Hervey, Carlos, um, Kevin. Yeah. And it's, and some of those names, some of those individuals we don't talk on a daily basis, but I think back to just all the things throughout our friendship, right? And the different bonds we've had, and they've had varying degrees of closeness, but man, those have all been great additions to my life. So yeah, shouts out to them, and apologies if I missed anyone off the top of my head.
Yes.
Yeah.
Charge his head, not his heart.
Yes, thank you.
It's
Ooh, that's a good. Oh, I'm using that one all
yes.
2024.
Exactly. Like sometimes we, can't remember everything. And those of you, you can't see him, but when he said those names, his face lit up. And that shows the positive impact these his friends have had on him. So hopefully you all out there are feeling the good energy around you. I always talk about Ema. Ema's name will probably be mentioned in 45 podcasts, but my great friends, Anthony, Cardell, and more recent friends too. Like I have, of course, as well as Sylvia, Kenyatta, of course,
Yeah.
Erica, and Buvina, who is like the smartest person I know on earth, and she's always so busy. She's like a professor in aerospace engineering.
Oh yeah,
You
she's the
know,
smartest
very
person on
male,
earth
yeah,
for
male
sure.
dominated field. So we talk when we can talk. She has a lot going on, but that is some person, like we've literally met freshman year, one of the first or second people I met, and we've maintained in contact. My friend Farai that lives in London that I have to visit, Maceo that lives in Belgium that I just spoke to earlier.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
many like great people around the world, and I've just said to Brian, charge my head,
Yeah.
not my heart.
How's your heart?
And I
Yeah.
left your name out, but I really would not be where I am without having like good friends, good honest friends, and people supporting me and like being honest. And also, I think the last thing I do want to say is like support looks different because I think when we start things,
Yes, that's so
sometimes people
good.
assume that support means buying your thing,
Mm-hmm.
listening to your thing. It
Yeah.
may not be that. It may be sharing a link, giving
Yes.
feedback, connecting you with other people. Because everything you do is not everybody's thing,
Yeah.
but as long as they don't make you feel bad about it, I think is what you want in terms of support. So even like with this podcast, I have some friends who've shared it with everybody they know, and then I have others who were like, "Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool."
Yeah.
So
Right. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Appreciate it.
exactly, but it's all good. So yeah, definitely look for that. The last thing I did want to share, because I did want to share some questions with everyone to assess your relationship health if you don't necessarily have a good sense of discernment or you're just kind of not feeling good energy.
Yeah.
One of the questions to ask yourself is, do you want to share with this person? Like, are you holding back for any
Ah.
reason? Like, do you feel unsafe? Do you seek their help? Do you feel like that's somebody you can go to if you needed good advice or even sometimes financial help? But that's also a little like,
Yeah.
let's make sure
Yeah. That could be
we're real.
tricky. You may want to have
Exactly.
documentation for that.
Exactly. So make sure, but or they give you good advice, good feedback. Do you feel connected to them? And I think Brian and I both talked about that. It's like that space doesn't exist or time. When
Yeah.
you get back together, it's like you're vibing, the energy's good. But if you feel some awkwardness, something's a little off, trust yourself
Yeah.
and figure out
Explore
like
that
what's
more.
going on there. And when you think of them, do you think positive thoughts? Like, are
Yes.
you frustrated, upset? Like, because like I said, when Brian was talking about his friends and when I talked about mine, we both were smiling and really thought of some good memories. And do you feel supported? Do you get positivity and encouragement? Do you feel like what they're saying to you doesn't come from a place of jealousy?
Mm.
And again, like I said, supportive doesn't mean co-signing. Supportive may also
Mm.
mean holding you accountable. So if you're doing something that's a little sketchy, you need a friend or two in your life that's going to be like, yo, what's up? And honestly, I actually know my friends for which one will do it. And sometimes
Yeah,
selfishly, I will
yeah,
choose
yeah,
the
yeah.
friend that will give me what I need. Like Eva's my like, girl, what is wrong with you? Like accountable, like straight to the point friend. Tiana's my neutral friend. So if I want somebody to tell me the most neutral,
Yeah.
non-problematic causing thing, and then if I want somebody to just be like, girl, that sounds like a good idea. I got a couple of friends for that. I got a couple,
That's
like
funny.
my friend Jaleesa, my friend Tasha, they're like, girl, that sounds like fun. So, you also know, so be honest with yourself. And then do you feel your difference are appreciated? Like,
Yeah.
do they make you feel wrong for being a vegan or wanting to go to
Right.
Comic-Con or being a blurred or heck, you're a Seventh-day Adventist, like whatever it
Right.
is about you that is your thing. Like, do they make you feel bad about it and constantly making jokes and passive aggressive things? Because if that's the case, that's probably not a safe friendship for you. And that goes into the next, are you comfortable with them? Would you trust them?
Mm.
If you didn't feel well or your safety was in their hands, would you be okay with that? Or would you be calling somebody else to help you out? And then is it mutual? Do you feel like you're putting in all the work for that friendship and that person's not reciprocating in any kind of way?
Yeah.
Do you feel left out or excluded, like they're doing a lot of things without you? Because if that's happening, it may not be a mutual friendship. And that does happen. Sometimes
Yeah.
you develop a closer bond with someone than they develop with you. But ultimately, are you okay with that? Like, if are you okay with that dynamic? Do you want it to shift? But have a conversation. Don't just decide they hate you or your enemies. Sometimes it's just miscommunications, or someone else might be planning. Because if I have another friend planning something, I'm not going to invite my friend that's outside of that circle if they
Right.
don't know.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So ask questions. Like, don't immediately jump to, conclusions.
Yeah.
But, so hopefully you all listening to this really, heard some stories about some really great friendships, but also can think about how to like look at the friendships in your life and then also be the kind of friend you want to be, based on what we talked about today. But that's Brian. Do you have any closing thoughts you want to share?
Just I want to make sure I got his name in there. One of my other Rutgers roommates, Dane. So I have a roommate named Dana, and then another one named Dane. Right. So that could be
Okay.
confusing. So I want to make sure. So yeah, Dane. If I didn't shout you out earlier, definitely want to shout out Rutgers 612. But no, Kalada, this was super awesome. Um, Look, we can't. We shouldn't go through life alone because we're going to have triumphs, we're going to have tragedies, we're going to have everything in between. And I've experienced, great things in my life by having, friendships at all levels. And yeah, I encourage everyone to, look at your friendships, being open to, great relationships, being open to uniqueness and different perspectives that others can bring and that you can bring to others as well too. And yeah, just wishing everyone a great 2024 with lots of love and happiness with your friends.
Yes, that's a great wish. Yeah, I wish for everyone to have connectedness and relatedness in 2024 as well. Because as Brian just said, you don't want to go through life alone. We definitely need some people in our corner. And so, Brian, where can the listeners find you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, let's see. I'm in a few places. So I'm definitely on LinkedIn. Brian Wilson. Actually, yeah, I'm sure you'll drop a link. Also, I'm big into photography. So if you go to my website, photographicbrian.com, and it's Brian with an I. I don't know anyone that spells it with a Y, and people keep asking me how I spell my name. So photographicbrian.com. You can check me out there as well too. So thank you.
Okay. Yes. So thank you so much for being on this episode. I can't wait to get it out to the audience. I want to thank everybody for listening. Please leave comments below, like, subscribe, follow, share. And I'm sure Brian will be back. So if you have any
Yeah,
other
I'd love
questions
to.
for him, and you want to bring him back, I'm sure that'll be happening really soon. But thank you all so much for listening.